Welcome to our space where talking about the inspiring things with inspiring people is what inspires us. Waiting for you here are the infinite possibilities that creation, collaboration, and connection have to offer. A universe where we see everything through rose-tinted spectacles that help us to keep our faith in the power of imagination alive and well. And now, let's talk. Today, Metralla Rosa has a very special guest, Zeke Apollyon, High Cardinal of the Global Order of Satan. He is here with us to clarify some of the preconceptions we probably all have about what it means to be a Satanist, or also to dismantle some of the myths we all probably also have about what it means to live under the rules of Satan. Thank you so much for being here with us. It means the world. It's really a conversation we wanted to have to start the 2021, which I think personally, and this is probably because of some astrological concepts, is going to be a very different era from the one we had before. And I would like to know about your journey. I would like to know many personal things, but just to make some points clear and to start with, what's your personal definition of Satanism?
Well, so Satanism has been around for some time. And I think just like Christianity or, any Abrahamic religion, you have incarnations of it that mean different things to different people. There's kind of a nihilistic, kind of self-centered version of Satanism that's out there. There's a solitary practitioner's Satan that people can identify with. There's theological Satanism, which is more like devil worship for some people. And then there's the atheistic, more compassionate and benevolent brand of Satanism that we practice.
Okay, so for you, or for your order, for your congregation, is it more like a philosophical construction, or is it more like a spiritual practice, or a little bit of both?
It's both, yeah, it's absolutely both. Some of our key pillars are around self-fulfillment, and so that would be kind of the philosophical aspect to it. It's very much about doing the work, the hard work to take care of yourself, the things that aren't fun, the things you kind of have to drag yourself and force yourself to do in order to be the best you that you can be. And that when you have that kind of abundance, you can then turn and give that freely to other people. And it's beneficial to oneself to do things for other people because it feels good.
Okay, I understand that in general, living life with total autonomy, not being scared of the emotions that are by definition considered bad, and practicing equality and empathy and a general sense of justice is mainly what Satanists want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that autonomy within reason as well. I mean, it's one of those things where, especially when you start to kind of talk about other people, it's kind of a big piece to unpackage. Everybody should have autonomy, or autonomous will, and we believe that everybody should have that. However, it's not, a dog eat dog sort of thing. And if you violate the autonomous rights of other people to be able to guide themselves in their own journey of self-fulfillment, then you invalidate your own rights.
Okay. And what drew you to Satanism? To start a little bit with your own story, and you are now the High Cardinal of this organization based in UK that has grown a lot in UK also in the last years. But you are American. You're from the
I am.
United
Yes.
States. So please tell me your personal journey. How did it start, and how?
Well,
When and how? Sorry.
I would say that I've been a feminist probably for most of my life, and also an advocate and an activist for reproductive rights. I think actually that's probably how I sort of came to feminism, was just in the pervasive injustice and the war against women's bodies that was waged in the U.S. By the religious right and religious idealism or religious extremism or extreme viewpoints that were co-opted by the religious right. So as you probably are aware, especially kind of throughout the 80s, there was a very big kind of satanic panic. There was a lot of really heavy-handed dogma that was really kind of put in place to divide people. You have, when I was 14, I started doing clinic defense. I started volunteering my time so that I could support women who were trying to access their family planning options at Planned Parenthood facilities throughout Northern California.
Okay.
And I really learned a lot by doing that. It just seemed so unfair to me that people who claimed to love God and their message was about love, that they wanted to prevent people from being able to make their own choices about the families that they wanted to have and when they wanted to have them. So I started giving my time to that, and I learned a lot about. I learned a lot about what was happening in the world. I became a lot more aware of the politics and women's bodies and women's rights and healthcare, and I came to see doctors as sort of heroes, and volunteers alike as well. You know, anybody who was showing up there to escort people past protesters, and this was during a time where doctors had to wear bulletproof vests when they went to work because they were being shot at by religious extremists.
Yeah, so you were pro-choice, pro-abortion,
absolutely. Absolutely, I'm absolutely.
And actually, the Satanic Temple UK, I don't know if you are still part of it, but it was supporting, not far ago, a movement that happened in Ireland for women that were asking for the legal right of abortion. But so this was the beginning of a critical thinking in you. But when and how did you got actually in contact with a community of Satanists for first time? Can you remember how it was, how you felt, what did it mean for you?
I think for a long time, I just felt really I grew up really religious. And so I felt
that explains a lot.
Very religious in a strict religious household where I had to read the Bible 5 days a week, 6 o'clock in the morning, before school, every day for hours. Yeah.
That is strict.
Yeah, it was very strict. There was a lot of restrictive guidelines around the way that I dressed, those sorts of things. How I talked to who I was friends with. It was very strict. And I spent a lot of my free time in, church youth groups and whatnot. And, most of my friends were also religious, but, with the onset of puberty and, learning about things, you start to question the things around you. And what I was kind of confronted with was this very strong religious voice of dissent that said, do not ask questions.
You just follow the rules.
Right. And that never made sense to me. But when I came in contact with another satanic order, which was, as you know, the Satanic Temple, which is based in the U.S.
Is the one co-founded by Lucian Grape?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah. So I had seen something, I think, on Facebook at the time that was talking about a campaign that they were doing where they were trying to, they were basically funding women to get abortions if they weren't available in the states where they lived, to allow them to travel and to access those reproductive health options. And I was really behind that because reproductive health has been a huge thing for me.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, and I just was like, sign me up. How do I sign up? So I'd signed up with them and wanted to, I asked to, or I'd petitioned to start a chapter. And they got back to me and they were like, this sounds great. We did some sort of vetting and there were meetings with people and we, formed it. And, with any kind of group, you go through a lot of sort of changes in personnel and whatnot. And we took a little bit before we really kind of were able to put it together. But it was those sorts of values. And it was because like the tenets that they had outlined looked really solid. They were things that I was very interested in. And so we kind of continued with them for some time. But then as time went on, it became very clear that a lot of their aims were very centered on the U.S. and the Satanic Temple as an organization didn't really have the capacity or the understanding of various other governments and how things were working there, what sort of issues were happening. They didn't really have that kind of connection. So the reasons that we cited for leaving were centralized bureaucracy and cultural isolationism. So were you going to say something?
No.
Oh, sorry. I didn't want to talk over you.
No, I was thinking, in which moment did you decide to come to the UK and be the founder of... were you the founder of the Satanic Temple here?
Of the UK branch, yeah, I was. So I set it up. I had lived here anyway. I had moved here to get married, over a decade ago now. But I wanted to, when that jumped out at me, I was like, this is something I can get behind. This is action, and not just ideology. It was the idea of living in service of your values that was important to me.
And that's what you came to do.
Yeah. Yeah. When your passion is woken up in that way, and it really did wake up that passion in me, and it lit a fire.
What did create the separation with the actual Satanic Temple in United States? I understand that there was a little bit of a complaint about this cult of a personality that goes around maybe some of the leaders, including Lucian, in United States. Is that true? Am I wrong?
So I'm cautious about making any indictments about their order. But the things that we ultimately decided was that the way that they were built, their structure was one where, one needed to ask for permission for things.
For everything.
Yeah, for everything. And like I said, there's a centralized bureaucracy there. And at the end of the day, that wasn't very satanic. I think we had a difference of opinion over a campaign that we supported in Bavaria, where we sent upside down crosses to publicly accessed government buildings in protest to the installation of crucifixes in publicly accessed government buildings.
In a country that was supposed to not be Catholic by state.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So we sent upside down crosses as kind of like a little, we were trolling them really.
Yeah.
But it got a lot of press. And we felt like it was important for that kind of intolerance to not just be accepted and for there to be some kind of a protest. And especially because of our proximity, and because we have so many close relationships with so many different people in various countries, which now have, started up their own orders. We felt like it was important to support them. We couldn't not have a voice. Satanism mandates dissent.
Especially if you could. If you could, the opportunity was there.
Absolutely. And it wasn't something that they liked because we hadn't gotten official approval from them.
Okay.
So there was a difference of opinion there. And then we just kind of had to evaluate for ourselves whether or not we felt like it was useful for us to continue as a part of them, or if in fact we were better suited to try and create a base of operations where we could then have more of a open source Satanism, and we could give time and resources and experience and structure to various other people out there who had the same ideas and wanted to do similar things in their own countries. And
Did
we
that
wanted to
happen in
empower them to do that.
2018? Sorry.
That happened in, I want to say 2018. I'm going to tell you, I am so bad with like numbers. And
Me too, but I don't know why. I know that in 2018 there was something happened that was definitively like a moment important for you to take that decision. But whatever, it doesn't
I think it
matter.
was 2018. It was whenever, it was just before they started filming the documentary that was on the Hail Satan documentary.
So now the global order of Satan, what it's trying to do is to give an umbrella and embrace people from many different countries, including South America, countries in Asia, here
The Middle
in the
East.
UK, Middle East. Is that what you are trying to do?
Yeah, we want to, as much as possible, we want to empower people to start their own rebellion, you know, using Satanic framework.
Okay. If you should mention a particular passage of biblical text or literature where do you think they can be useful to be graphic about why do you think this idea of Satan, this construction about what the devil is, it's good for us? Would you be able to mention something? For example,
Yeah.
in the Bible, I remember to have listened a Satanist that once said, and it made a lot of sense for me, when Christ was in the desert and he was offered water by the devil, the normal thing would have been in that moment to get the help and do something that was going to save you, instead of seeing the help as a temptation, which is a very complicated and vicious construction. Why should I see things like that? And for example, that's my example.
To pathologize self-care.
Exactly. How is it there any particular moment of literature of the biblical text that for you is very graphic to explain why do you think the actual construction of this figure that we call the devil, it's good, not bad?
Yes. I mean, just as early as Genesis, even like the whole Eve being tempted by Satan as a snake to partake from the tree of knowledge. You hear from people about their idea or their interpretation of the Bible, and a lot of times what you get out of it is this kind of cause and effect, or this kind of call and response of like man as a sinner and God as a savior. And it's interpretation. You know, when I look at that passage of the Bible, which obviously, you know, we see it as a work of fiction, but like any work of fiction, sometimes there are key lessons inside of it that you can glean from it. And the parable of the Garden of Eden is really a story about maturation. You know, on its surface, what it is just simply looking at it, it is about birth and personal development and growth. And of course, when you gain knowledge, which you must gain knowledge, you can't possibly exist and not gain knowledge.
Yeah, or not value knowledge.
Yeah, or not have like experiences that cause you to grow, that move you from this place of naivete, which the Garden of Eden was meant to symbolize.
As good.
Well, yeah, it was saying you have...
As divine.
Right. Well, their passages are that, you know, it's this, you know, this place they were naked and they knew not, you know, that they should be ashamed or anything like that.
That's so true. Like not knowing it's a divine thing, and knowing it's a vicious thing when it should be the opposite. It should be the opposite. We should see as a virtue knowledge.
I don't think our environments are divine. I think that we are divine
Yeah,
as
exactly.
individuals. And so that story is really about, an encouragement of learning, which is a form of edification, and it's funny that it's the apple because, we put apples on teachers' desks in, various countries. It's like symbols of respect.
We should put snakes.
Why not? Why not? I mean, I'm all for it.
Some students, I'm sure they have done it. And so to be a Satanist, you don't really worship the devil.
We don't worship anything except for ourselves.
Okay. And you consider yourself, at least in your order or under your order, essentially atheists.
Yes.
Yeah. So in my case, completely opposite of your case, I come from an atheist family. So I have a fascinating approach to religions just because I never felt the pressure or the heavy weight of any of them. I just see them as a fount of knowledge, of literature, of metaphors, of poetry, because we all should relate like that to religions.
Yeah.
You are not against religion, I understand. But also you have a lot of rituals that maybe confuse the people and make them believe that these rituals are an invocation of the supernatural.
Right.
So what's the meaning of rituals for the Satanic Church?
My personal belief, and also the belief that we carry within the order, is that rituals are part of your everyday life. Whether one sees them that way or not. Having a cigarette with your morning coffee is like
I don't smoke, but I can understand the pleasure in that.
Yeah, I don't smoke either, but it's it's like a ritual of of pleasure in the morning.
My first glass of water in the morning.
Yeah.
Is, oh my God.
Or looking both ways before you cross the street is a ritual in which you don't be hit by a fucking car.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of rituals, weddings, when you join any kind of group or family or sorority or fraternity or any kind of hallmark of acceptance or change. Like these things are marked throughout time by various rituals. And that's what we do as well. Like they're just celebrations or acknowledgements of things that are happening for us. And it's support of that. So we're not calling down demons or anything like that. Our rituals are meant to create stronger bonds between our members. And they're also done performative sometimes. A number of years ago, we did a big ritual that was what we call a bloodletting ritual. And on the surface, what it looked like was that they drained a pint of blood from me and then poured it over my head. What it was, when you looked into it, was it was a protest to the legislation that prohibited men who have sex with men and sex workers from being able to donate blood. Right. And we had actually a trained doctor come on stage in a hood and safely take my blood from in a way that was following safety protocols, and then it was disposed of in with clinical waste and biohazard precautions in the correct way. So it looks one way and people can have like one response to it, but it's actually kind of set up to have meaning. So it's like, I always tell people it's kind of like doing stunt work, where if you look at stunt performers, it looks like somebody's being thrown off of a building, or like somebody's crashing a car, and it can look quite spectacular, but in context, what it actually is something that's rehearsed, something that's staged, something that's set up, and it's intended to produce an outcome. So that's
somehow it's like a
are.
performance
It
art.
is.
It's a bit of what performers do, that they put on your face realities that sometimes it's hard to see, because they describe something that it's awful, or sometimes hard to swallow in terms of how we live and what we believe. But at the end of the day, it's a performative art, so a call of awareness.
Mhm.
Somehow, is that the way you see it, or what's the ideological perspective of magic inside of the Satanism? Because that's very interesting for me as well. I think, and for everyone, I think magic is one of the ways as human beings we accept our infinite potential, and we take part of the game, and we said to ourselves, okay, let's try to be more, to create the reality I want. Let's see if it's possible.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a game. I also see it that way. I think magic in general as a concept is a beautiful, playful idea. But how it's been seen inside, ideologically, inside of the Satanism in general. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people have described what we do as shadow work.
Yeah, I love that.
In that it's just kind of using dark imagery to illuminate things, and in our case, it would be things like injustice or marginalized people.
Yeah. Shadow work, I was going to say that somehow being a Satanist, it's somehow taking the step of adding the religious involvement. But I see it, me personally, as shadow work. If I am able to, in a circumstance, say to myself, I'm jealous. I feel jealous right now. The moment I see it, it goes.
Yeah.
The problem is when you fight against
That's
something that is just natural, and it happened to all of us. And also, I believe the more you are able to communicate these bad feelings or bad emotions, because it has historically has seen as something you should deny completely, the more the less power they have over you. So somehow you play with that, but with an aesthetic, with a name, Satanism, that honestly doesn't make things easier for the ones that doesn't know. So why do you, instead of using, that's a question I wanted to ask you a lot. Why, instead of using an imaginary or a message or a name more welcoming, you have chosen to have one that that from the beginning is going to create a lot of resistance?
It does create a lot more work for us, but it's also work that we're willing to do. I think it's because what is fundamental, certainly to our order, is critical thinking. And to do charitable, kind, benevolent acts in the name of, say, something like Satan, which has for a long time just had a bad rap, it causes you to have to stop and to question what you've learned. You have to say, well, if, Christians are crucifying people and, Satanists are, doing a food drive for the homeless, then what does that say about the things that I've learned? So it's really, like art in a way that causes you to question your perceptions and your experiences. That's sort of how we're set up. And we do understand that it's a little bit more legwork, but, I think what we end up getting out of it is so much more.
Maybe it's a kind of filter, so the people that gets close, they already have researched enough, they already know enough to be attracted instead of being scared of what can happen.
That's definitely one of the benefits, for sure. But there's also, secondarily, we just want to kind of restore Satan's reputation, I suppose.
I understand that also Satanism is a it's not based on a particular book, in a particular doctrine that has been, it's quite fluid and quite organic, and every single temple has their own general statements, but also their particular views.
Yeah, and there is some overlap in those areas.
Okay, but does that make the practice, does that make the doctrine, does that make the communitary work more difficult, or is it actually better and it should always be like that for all religions?
I wouldn't necessarily say that something should be the same for everybody, just because I think there's so many different kinds of people, and that different, I guess, religions will speak to people in different ways. You said something earlier that I wanted to kind of comment on, but you said that we weren't against religions, and we aren't. We're not anti-religious at all. What we are against is
how do you define yourself? As a cult?
No.
As a what? Because cult is not necessarily bad. Is it bad?
I don't think that they have the best reputation either.
Okay.
But so, no, I mean, I think cults kind of separate people from others, and actually we encourage connections. And also cults are secretive, and we're not secretive. We certainly have safeguards in place to protect the identities of our membership, because there's so much that is believed falsely about Satanists. But we're not secretive at all. We're transparent. And we are a religion. We are a religion because, I mean, religion is just custom and what one does for, I don't like to use the word spiritual, but I suppose that's a good word that people will understand. But for like a spiritual practice, something that like yoga or meditation or Tai Chi or, Ayurveda or, whatever like things people follow, hopefully we have a resonance with people.
Yes, what I wanted to say before, and I really didn't, is that not being a book-based doctrine, it gives you a lot of freedom. Also, it's quite young as conception. It is quite young.
It is quite young. We do borrow some of our ideology or some of our inspiration for, fighting against totalitarianism or autocracy. A lot of that comes from Romance literature and from these kind of incarnations of Satan as like a protector of other people.
Yeah, but my impression is that sometimes even the followers are somehow looking for something to believe blindly, and it's quite human to try to follow with that kind of faith that sometimes makes you more comfortable wearing something that is supposed to mean something, or screaming hi Satan instead of really doing the work of understanding why are you saying that and what's really the work that should be done.
Yeah.
And
I completely...
Is that frustrating for you? That's what I wanted to say.
Well, we don't get that so much, thankfully. We do have kind of a lot of rigorous screening protocols in place to ensure that our membership is there for the right reason. But you make a really wonderful point about, the need for faith. And what's great about our order is that actually faith isn't required. It's really about self-determination. And we hope that everybody that comes to our order understands that it's about personal guidance, and that, we are or can be for people, a kind of an oasis for the exchange of thoughts with people who have similar values.
Basically, you get together to do activism, to do community work together.
Yeah, and for social purposes too.
Some have to do the dirty work. Someone have to do the evil's work. Activism is being described for you as the devil's work.
Yes.
Because someone have to do it.
Yeah. Somebody's got to do the devil's work.
Exactly. But at the same time, And I understand that all beliefs and all human beings have that kind of contradictions. At the same time, the main fundamental principle of Satanism should be a little bit say about yourself, not necessarily about what you can do for charity. It's
it starts from the self.
It starts embrace your own. Take care of yourself, and we will live in a better world somehow.
Absolutely. So part of our initiation ritual involves a reflection period of about 3 months where novice members will kind of sit with themselves and their thoughts, and communicate with us as an order about what kinds of things they want to do, how they want to move forward, what sorts of things they need to do in their own life. It is not a unique experience for people to come to our order and for things to just change 180 for them. We've had people who have gotten married afterwards or gotten divorces or, quit jobs. The idea is that you have to have this kind of commitment to yourself. And like I said, it's not fun to do all the time. It's not something that comes first nature to people, especially for people who would consider themselves caretakers. It's an occupational hazard that people who are caretakers, who have tender hearts that want to look after others, will often put their own needs on the back burner, because who are they accountable to? Well, they're accountable to themselves. And there is a cost, even if it doesn't look like it on a daily basis. Maybe if it's a negligible cost, but those things add up and it can have an impact. And what our order asks one to do is to sit with oneself and to sit with that discomfort and to look at what it means to have the life that they want. And I don't mean like Tony Robbins kind of have the life that they want, but to live in a way that is a lot more authentic, but the way that they feel, and with their thoughts, and to question things as well. And so we offer a space for people to have this kind of dialogue. And honestly, as much as like the work that we do in the community, or the things that we might do to stand up to injustice or to, political ideals that we see as being fascist, we spend a lot of time with our membership base, really doing a lot of very deep emotional work. And so that's a very big part. It's a private part, but it is something that we do with everybody who comes there. There is a great deal of pastoral care that is given to everybody who comes in, and there is a lot of integrity around that. And that's something actually that I feel incredibly proud about, because that's unique from the Satanic Temple. It's unique from other orders, but it's something that I have seen the beneficial way that it can impact people's lives, and I've seen growth, and it's a beautiful thing, especially when we're confronted on a daily basis with these negative images and these apocalyptic feelings, to be able to know that you have this wonderful safe space where you can connect with people and talk about things and what they really mean and share experiences as outsiders. It's beautiful, and it is something that I feel immense gratitude for.
Apart from the fact that many people believe that Satanism is you are a group of drinkers' blood people, or people that tortures children or practice cannibalism or things like that. Apart from that, which are the obvious misunderstandings, what irritates you the most, because you see again and again that people keeps believing and has nothing to do with the reality?
Well, that actually is what it is. That irritates me the most, is the refusal to believe things in spite of being presented with evidence to the contrary. That always bothers me.
How guilty is the pop culture in this construction of Satanism under that perspective? Or
guilty.
From that perspective?
We the people say you are guilty.
I'm sorry, I'm a Catholic.
No, that's fine. But that is what it is. I think all of these kind of, I mean, it's a double-sided coin, isn't it? Like, on the one hand, like, it is disadvantageous to kind of have people thinking that we do these things. I always say that The Devil Rides Out and Rosemary's Baby aren't actually documentaries.
No.
They're works of fiction. But it's so embedded, I think, in the cultural consciousness.
And I'm sure you love the movie.
Oh, yeah, they're great. They're great. I think they're
it's
wonderful.
not about, but you have to see it from the perspective of a film, a piece of film, a beautiful piece of art.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's art. And I think that, I'm sorry, your question was about...
how guilty is the pop culture about this perspective most of us, I'm going to include myself, have wrongly about what those Satanists.
I'd say that they're probably not as guilty as like some of the religions that really want to like drive home that kind of guilt and want to hold people spiritually captive to this notion that anything that they do that is like maybe a fumbling in life or a mistake is a sin. The creation, it's for centuries. Satanism, I think Satanism developed back between the 8th and 7th, well, not Satanism, sorry, full stop, rewind. The idea of a devil or this kind of, negative figure within religion, within cosmology, or dualistic cosmology really came out of Zoroastrianism and the Hebrew Bible, and there are these different kind of archetypes that sort of they fused together and personified and made into this kind of like figure that was opposed to Christ, so they could have this explanation for why things go wrong or what's bad. It was just kind of a scapegoat for all the negativity in the world that people couldn't reconcile with their notions of like a just God. So I think religion is really kind of responsible for shaping that kind of negativity. Does evil exist in the world? I don't know. Do people commit acts that are unspeakable? Absolutely. But can you attribute that to a devil? Probably not as much as you can attribute it to man. I think man is punishing. Man does things that are terrible to other people. Man, puts people to death. Man.
Yeah, and what I see is that the more you reconcile, maybe this is a little bit naive from my perspective, maybe because I had a good education, maybe because I had the opportunities. I see that the more you look at the shadow in yourself, you confront that. The more you do it, the more light you put on it, and it instantly tend to disappear. In the future, you will have to do it again and again and again, because the shadow is always there and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more you work with it. But I don't know, maybe we have these demoniac situations in the world just because nobody wants to do that work. But
that's a really
as I
good
said,
point.
maybe it's very naive from me to think like that. I don't know.
I don't think so at all. In fact, actually, you said a few things since we've been here that I feel like are quite wise. So you're obviously self-aware and then also aware of the world around you. Obviously, if you don't confront stuff, then it's going to create a problem. The more that we ignore things, the worse it gets, like a cut or anything like that, or a splinter that can get infected. And dealing with the problem, it's only after dealing with it that you can start to heal. I always reflect back to science because I see so many analogies for life reflected in science.
For example?
Well, people, the way that people are attracted to each other, this doesn't really have so much to do with Satanism, but, you've got people who are like, form bonds easily and break them just as easily. You've got your slightly positive people that, are looking for slightly negatives to form stable compounds.
Yeah, the dynamic seems to be perfect, and that's the balance we always should try. I think the more we deny of what we call negative because of this binary vision of the world we have, the more we attract that, because it's actually the opposite of what we should be doing. But whatever. One of the things also I read and thought it was interesting about your order is that you said, okay, God is supernatural, is super far away from you, is too divine to come to save you. Then don't pray to God, pray to Satan, which is like you and is going to help you. What's the real idea behind this?
Well, we don't believe in God or Satan, but that all of these things, like within any kind of philosophical understanding, like all of these archetypes are you. Like they're all part of you. Like we all have darkness as much as like we have light. We all have the ability to answer our own questions or prayers, or to be able to like discern guidance for ourselves.
Do you do that? Do you sit down with your questions to find discernment?
Yeah, I mean, I have to. It's like I can't even take a step without understanding where I'm going or why. You know, those kinds of things, that kind of reflection, that inner reflection is paramount. You know, certainly for me, definitely for people within our order. But so our idea is that, you know, rather than kind of waiting for something to happen, you know, can reflect inwards. It's a really big conversation because it isn't just about, you know, meeting one's own needs to like the way that religion creeps in with people and the kind of supernatural elements of it. Like I see a lot of, confirmation bias for people, you know, or like pareidolia, where, you know, the word for seeing a face in the clouds, you know, you find these constructions, you create things that have meaning for you. Or you see, or you believe things like in the face of like evidence that's presented to you. You know, you only kind of like take into consideration the evidence that supports your point of view. And those are the things I think about kind of like Christianity or, you know, Abrahamic religions, that bothers me, that, and also kind of, you know, just flat out judgment about other people. But I think that it's important for when one does reflect, that they look at themselves, and be quiet. You know, it's like that, those answers come in the stillness.
Yeah.
You know, not when we're blasting Guns N' Roses at, you know, 10 or whatever. So
you being critical about the world, it's important, but mostly being critical about yourself first is huge. Absolutely. For you as ideology. And let's do a little bit of history for the ones that wants to know. I understand that it's a quite young religion, let's call it like that, from the 60s, and Anton LaVey is considered the father of it. I never know how to pronounce that in English, sorry, because in Spanish it would be LaVey. Yeah. LaVey. Okay, how do you say it?
I would say LaVey, but I don't think that it's necessarily, I don't think it's right or wrong. Pronunciation.
It sounds French, so we are probably both wrong.
Yeah, or we're both right.
Or both right, yeah, I like it. And he was the founder of the
Church of Satan.
The first.
Yeah.
Church of Satan. And he was in itself a huge character, but it wasn't taken very seriously, maybe because of this side of him that was a little bit Hollywood-esque.
Yeah.
But I think in the books he wrote and the statements he tried to create, he did a very wonderful work. What's your own relationship with this figure? What do you think about him?
I mean, I've got some books on him at home. I'm always interested in kind of different ideologies, you know, and obviously a little bit of who we are is informed by the wonderful, you know, work that and the wonderful foundation rather that he laid out as kind of a structure for rebellion, you know, or a blueprint for voicing dissent. So in that, I think that there's definitely thanks that we have to give to him. But I
He
also
wrote the Bible of
the
Satanic
yeah.
Bible.
And
yeah.
also there's another book that was kind of a companion book called The Satanic Witch that was written for women. And my own kind of, I guess, personal feelings about it is that, well, I think that it was good for its time. You know, it made a point to kind of mock a lot of social mores and a lot of hypocrisy that is prevalent or was prevalent then and is still prevalent today. And I think that what's not nice now is that we've kind of evolved a bit and, ideologies have changed, certainly about women's place and like what women are capable of. And so our own ideology is a little bit different and reflects that. So it's slightly different, but we, are obviously owe a debt of gratitude to anybody who has shown dissent against social institutions that are hypocritical.
Is there any other author or any other figure that is really important for you when it comes to confront the ideological side of Satanism? Someone that you would recommend or someone that was important in your own...
Anatole France's Revolt of Angels is a really good read. Paradise Lost also is a text that lots of different satanic groups have used as a touchstone for their ideas about Satanism.
I love that you mentioned that one of the reasons why you started feeling drawn by this movement or by this ideology or religion was because you felt you were a feminist.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I believe is that from its pure ideological perspective, Satanism sounds really feminist and really anti-racist and pro-equality, obviously. And
it is.
It is because I wanted to discuss that with you. Do you think it is? There's this artist that you probably know. She is called Jax
Blackmore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love Jax.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
She's amazing. I love her.
Yeah.
And I would like to quote something she said in a podcast recently. She said, modern interpretation of Satanism has been based on a male-dominated formula where women still play a submissive role and even acting as furniture sometimes. What are you trying to do in your own congregation, in your own order, to define that? Because she's probably right.
She's right.
Okay.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. I mean, I'd even go further to say that not only is it just you're right, and a boys club, and it's also a white boys club.
A white boys club. That's interesting. Please tell me what specific actions you think should be taken to change this reality.
Well, we prioritize leadership roles, and we don't recruit. But because we feel like Satanism is something that people should come to themselves. Likewise, we don't ask for donations from people or, any kind of financial support from our membership. Unlike other religions, it's something that we always just kind of felt like it wasn't quite right. There's that George Carlin joke about, God is great. He loves you. And he wants your money.
You don't ask for money. That's one of the...
No, we don't. No,
very
there's no
important
cost per membership.
Yeah.
And I mean, whereas other organizations that you might join, there might be a cost.
Okay.
But we have intentionally left that free. Getting back to your question, though, we prioritize these roles of women in leadership positions. And none of the rituals that we construct.
I think the rituals are an important part. Not play with women like they were vases for flowers, right?
No, or we don't objectify them in, we're not going to tie them up and do things that might not seem
asexual.
Well, yeah, well, they
Oh,
might be
yeah.
seen, yeah, it might be seen that way. It's much more important to us that our rituals be either led by women, or that, like I said, we have like women in power, women featured prominently within the order. A lot of I think we're pretty good split at this point between all of our various roles of, men versus women.
That's good. I would like to go one, let's say, to continue the conversation, but already getting to the end. Oh, but before this, you have a very interesting action of activism that is called body autonomy.
Oh,
I love to talk about that first, where people that has been scarred or has any physical mark produced by domestic abuse, you have team up with tattoo shops, and then they can do a tattoo on top of those scars. I feel like that's amazing, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to have an act of reclamation.
It is reclamation. It is about reclamation.
It's beautiful. Tell me, please, about that.
Absolutely. So my brother actually is a tattoo artist, and this kind of is how some of this started. Unfortunately, actually, he's passed away. It's actually coming up to the year of his passing.
Was he also a Satanist?
No, but he was aware of the work that we were doing, and he was very proud of it, but not anywhere near as proud as I was of him. He wasn't somebody who had loads of formal education. And, he just came into all of his experiences with like open eyes. And he was approached by a domestic violence organization to do a donation as an artist, so that they could auction it and raise money. And through the course of this donation, he became more familiar with this charity, and was like, maybe the role of men shouldn't be marginalized in trying to do something about domestic violence. So he donated his time, got to know women, and through that work, women would kind of tell him, when he said he was a tattoo artist, they'd be like, oh man, I got this name on my arm that I see it every day, or like, I've got this scar and like I hate it and I'm not in that relationship now, but it's like a painful reminder of this trauma that I had to endure, and it's kind of like a brand. And he was just like, get in the car, all of you, let's go to my shop, and I'm just gonna do free tattoos on all of you.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it, because it's also a very active way to create and transform your own body, and that means transform yourself.
Yeah.
Because of the importance our bodies have in our life.
Absolutely. Yeah. We should be able to say what is on us and why.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So you are still doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an
ongoing project.
Yeah, it's an ongoing project. So it is something that
that's amazing. Congratulations, because I genuinely, sincerely think it's beautiful. So there are some fundamental statements about the Satanic Church that I would like to go one by one with you.
The Satanic Church or the Global Order of Satan?
You will tell me.
Okay.
You will tell me. I think these ones were written by Anton Levy.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure,
so,
but you will tell me. Indulgence instead of abstinence. So I tell you and you explain me.
Sure.
Do you like the game?
Sure. Yeah, no, this is great. I love this.
Okay,
I'm so glad that you're doing this. This is really lovely. This is great.
I do the homework.
Yeah.
Okay. So indulgence instead of abstinence. Why is that good?
Well, so because that's a Church of Satan philosophy, I think the idea is that experience and knowledge comes from the doing and not from the not doing.
Even if you have to regret, sometimes it's better to regret about what you had the courage to do than to feel constrained about what you never did.
There is a strong, I can't even call it an undercurrent because it's so pervasive, but there is a strong moralism that accompanies a lot of, things that people might want to do. Like, let's say drugs,
Mm-hmm.
for example, just as an example.
Crazy sex.
Yeah, right.
Whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
so in the example of something like substance use, there might be a hard line in religion about it. Sex, drugs, whatever. Don't do these things. But time passes on and we learn other things, like that sometimes psychoactive drugs can be used successfully in treating various mental health conditions, or that some drugs may be used in bringing couples together in relationship therapies, and sex also.
Yeah, I also feel really connected to this because, in general, this Judeo-Christianity believe that restriction is good and indulgence is bad. It's so it goes against any principle related with abundance and with life, vitality,
Yeah.
and
It goes against life and vitality.
It's
this
just,
sort of
it's just killing
self-flagellation
life.
where
Yeah,
you're just
why do you
not.
want to kill
Why?
the life in you?
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Indeed. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
I love this one, and I'm happy that it's the first one. Satan represents vital experience instead of spiritual pipe dreams.
That's funny.
Why?
Well, just the use of like the language of pipe
Yeah,
dreams.
it's a little bit.
Well, I mean, there's this kind of like whole thing where people surrender their power to, unseen forces, within the framework of their ideology. And
It's so easy being scared.
what do you mean?
It's easy being scared of things that tells you. I think it's the child in us that makes us susceptible to ideas of the things we need to be scared. It's easy. So
Well, it's institutionalized, right? Like it's kind of driven into us sometimes at a young age. And it's also because a lot of like our beliefs really, especially as kind of Western civilizations, really come from this like development of this idea of, Christianity as an export, that started around the time of the Industrial Revolution. And
colonization.
yeah, absolutely. And all of that stuff, which is actually, we know it to be kind of destructive for lots of different civilizations. And
that had amazing beliefs, by the way, some of
absolutely.
them. Yeah,
that
much
were
better than
rich
us.
and rewarding.
Richer,
Exactly. Yeah. Polytheism, is kind of tossed out for this notion of kind of, monotheism. But where I think this is, I think what this is trying to say is that Satanism is invitational. It invites you to have experiences, to try these things that you might just have kind of your hand out to. Some people don't travel because, they are afraid of different cultures and they're afraid of the things that they don't know, like the unknown. The unknown can be so scary.
Or sometimes
for people.
they travel and they don't go to places.
Right.
They just go physically, but they don't go emotionally. They don't get involved. They don't really experience because they're scared of what they don't know.
It's fear is limiting. Fear is limiting. And I think that, Satanism does invite you to try and partake in things that maybe you might be afraid of. We're not saying like go out and shoot yourself full of heroin or anything like that, or things that are going to compromise like your health and welfare, because, self-fulfillment is the most important thing.
Yes.
And I know how that can be interpreted sometimes by various people who might also consider themselves Satanists. But it's not, you either surrender your power or you can indulge or partake in different experiences and make decisions for yourself. Yeah.
Satan represents undefined wisdom, on pure wisdom, let's say, because that word is difficult for me, instead of hypocritical self-deceived.
Is it hypocritical?
Satan represents
deceit. Yeah.
Self-deceived.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, that's the thing. It kind of goes back to where we were talking about the beliefs that people have that are just kind of blind beliefs. blind belief. Satanism is all about asking questions. It's about doing that investigation for yourself. I mean, having a conversation with somebody who's experienced something firsthand versus somebody who's just kind of heard it from somebody else and has just decided that it's true. It's completely different. They're different sources.
Would you say that someone that is a nihilist, an atheist, someone that doesn't believe in any religion but the power of themselves, it's a Satanist even if they don't know? They are Satanists even if they don't know? Or do you need to be consciously Satanist to be a Satanist?
I think that practices can be inherently or intrinsically satanic, especially if like their values that
an
people
agnostic
as
person, I mean, is by nature a Satanist.
Potentially, I think, because I think that they are labels, and I think that there is a lot of gray area between them. So I wouldn't necessarily put a label on somebody. I wouldn't want somebody to call me something that I didn't feel like I was necessarily. But at the same time, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Maybe they just need an opportunity.
If it looks like he is, we said in Venezuela. Does he looks like he is? Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it, instead of love wasted on ingrates.
That's a
very good one.
It's a good one, but it's also very tough.
Yeah, but it's a good one.
I think everybody for themselves has to decide where that line is and who that person is. Because I, for example, might have tolerance towards somebody that other people wouldn't have tolerance for. And just because they're not tolerating that person, I'm not going to try and make them be more tolerant of them. But
that one talks to me about boundaries also, which are a very important practice when you come to self-love.
Can I read
to
that
love
again?
yourself.
I just want to be clear on it.
1 second, because I have so many things written here. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it, instead of love wasted on ingrates. And if you ask me, it's one of the things that when you come from a Catholic frame of mind, because my family wasn't, but culturally, let's say South America is all Catholic, you tend to believe that you need to tolerate everything in order to be virtuous or to be good.
Yeah,
and sometimes learn boundaries without hurting anyone.
Well, but I remember
it's a good thing. It's a good practice.
I was somewhere, and I remember I was having the discussion with someone about this whole we have to respect everyone's beliefs sort of thing, and I was like, actually, no. Why do we have to respect everyone's belief? Like that whole kind of like, can't we all get along? It's an ideological fallacy. Do I need to respect neo-Nazis' beliefs? No. Why? What respect has it earned?
And if I can speak out against it, I should, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Satan represents vengeance. Say it? Vengeance, instead of turning the other cheek. I feel slightly uncomfortable with this one.
So do I. That's not part of our ideology.
Okay.
Yeah. So this stuff...
That's good that you said the same, because when I was written them down, I was, this one is the only one that really makes me feel a little bit like, I don't know if I would think like that.
Well, so I think these are actually Church of Satan precepts and not necessarily Global Order of Satan ones. So the ones that we have are really around self-fulfillment, around belief in science as the fundamental basis for our experiences in the real world, about respect for others in their own pursuit for autonomy or the exercising of their autonomous will, and about those things being sort of precluded if you are to violate anybody else's autonomy.
Can I ask you, why is this one uncomfortable for you?
Well, because I'm not a vengeful person. I certainly have those attributes, and they're things that one can practice. But hate and things like that, like those kinds of elements, sometimes are just other alternative ways of remaining attached to things that are unhealthy. That's not, I'm not going to, smite down anybody necessarily. Especially if I'm confronted with somebody who doesn't feel like that I have any place or any kind of like ground to stand on.
I particularly believe that there's no better revenge than not doing the same of your enemy.
Well, they say living well is the best revenge.
Like, if I don't like what you're doing, I'm not gonna do the same. And revenge, and sometimes could be falling into the pattern that created the first.
Well, it's energy, right? It goes back to science, and it's like, well, what are you trying to create in your little lab there? What kind of ingredients are you putting together? Are they caustic? Are they benign? Like, what is it that you're trying to put into something, and what aim are you achieving? I think for me, or, I think that kind of what it's trying to say is that in the Bible, they're like, if somebody hits you, you're like, that's okay. It's about this complicity.
Yeah.
It's about this subservience or this submission.
Which we also don't want.
Right.
I don't want.
But,
yeah.
I think that the idea of like revenge, that's not necessarily a healthy construct. For some, vengeance may equal justice. And that's a whole other talk show.
Exactly. But justice is not necessarily revenge.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. We got there.
Yeah.
Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for the psychic vampires.
So, I guess with us, just from a GOS standpoint, with Global Order of Satan standpoint, we don't believe in vampirism or anything like that. But this is about.
I think it's coming back about. It's coming back to the fact that don't be scared of the supernatural. Just live responsibly your own life.
I think that it's for sure about. It's kind of like a wake up slap for a lot of people. Some people are in the back seat, I think, in their own lives for whatever reasons, and I'm not going to make a judgment about that. But when people and some people don't feel control over their life, and for some people, it's easier for them to feel that control is maybe in the hands of, a mythical god figure or something like that. Some people can get comfort from that, just like the guy that needs to be in relationships, otherwise he doesn't feel like he can function. Like, some people have that same kind of feeling with their own life because maybe a lot of their life has been unexplored, or a lot of it seems very scared, or maybe they're afraid of what they are on the inside and they don't want to let that out. There's lots of reasons like why people have these kind of beliefs, but I think that what this is kind of talking about is about this being responsible and not wasting your energy. That's not necessarily my belief necessarily, because they're talking about it seems very kind of black and white in the way that it's written, that it's like, be responsible with responsible people, but fuck these other people over here. I personally feel like Satanism is about autonomy.
Okay.
And about making decisions for oneself. And I actually prefer to spend time, not necessarily, I surround myself with people who are responsible, absolutely. But because I do that, and because I care for myself, I also feel inclined to visit some of these places that maybe aren't nurtured as well, that may be struggling. People
also,
that
because
may have
you
mental
need
health
contrast.
issues. Well, and also, what am I going to do? Like, live in this, like, lovely place with like lovely people, right? And exactly all the time. No, I want to actually be able to propagate that.
It's easy to be coherent if you don't expose yourself to people that thinks different and that acts differently. And then in those situations, you really can measure your coherence.
We don't expect people to come into our order with, complete training and to be at that level already. We know that people come in with their own luggage and things that they have to unpack and sort through and figure out for themselves. And
you are there for that.
Absolutely. I have all the time in the world for it. I really do.
Okay.
So I think also that I notice growth in people. So I think what I have a problem with that is that it seems a little bit dismissive of people that might have a lot of potential. But I think the undercurrent is that if something is taxing to you, if something is wearing on you, if something is draining to you, then you have to draw a line somewhere just for self-protection, I suppose.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay.
Absolutely. Satan represents man as just another animal. Not better, not worse. That's, there's much more written, but that's mainly what it says. I love that one. And it also means that for the church, the Satanic church in general, environment, and all species in the world are equally important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we definitely, there are some strong conservationist and
ecology, let's say, is important for you.
That is definitely a part of it, because it isn't just about people necessarily. It's it's all integrated, isn't it? Like the whole world is trying to maintain some kind of homeostasis, and a deficit in one area is going to correspond to a surplus somewhere else, and the world will try and self-regulate, not because it's magic, but because it's science.
Okay.
And that's the way that those things operate. And so we want things to be able to exist as they need to, eliminating, whatever.
It's basically respect.
It's respect. I'm sorry, I just want to...
Do you want to read it?
Yeah.
And sometimes better, more often worse, man in relationship with animals.
I think it's really easy for people who have these ideas about man having dominion over animal. It would be really easy to develop these kind of imperious notions about one's own race or species. And I feel like this passage is really about trying to maybe contextualize who we are as biological specimens that, don't walk on all fours all the time, but, we are just these biological creatures that have our own instincts and responses and fight or flight mechanisms and protective instincts. We have all of those things. And so instead of kind of maybe trying to see us as this, higher species or this kind of evolved and or enlightened group of beings.
It's about equality again.
We're about, we're these things. We are just animals. We are just animals. We're beasts. We like to fight. We like to fuck. We like to
eat.
Yeah, we like to sleep. All of those things.
Of course. I see that principle as simply very coherent with the essential sense of equality that we should pursue.
And for all of us, among all of us.
Yeah. Satan represents all the so-called sins, as they all lead to physical, emotional, or mental gratification. I love this one. And I think this is one of the main ones, if you consider that essentially what Satanists think or believe, as I understand, is not as the evil as something supernatural, but as the importance of the concept of Satan in our historical views, what it represents, not what it is, represents, in my understanding, the opportunity or the option to think differently, act differently, and just be yourself.
And to make choices for yourself.
Exactly. So under that principle, this one is huge, I feel.
Absolutely. I think that for me, like just looking at that passage, yeah, I kind of feel like the 7 deadly sins are held up a lot as, prohibitions, and as, even the notion of sin, is so dogmatic. When we're intended to make mistakes, and to develop an awareness about what things feed us and what things take from us as experiences. So I do feel like, there are some aspects of those things that can be gratifying, but I also think that, like with anything, too much isn't always a good thing.
And you find your limits yourself.
You find your
Other
limits
people
yourself.
doesn't have to impose them.
That's right.
You tend to find the limit, because you can eat like a pig, let's say, for pigs, and 3 days in a row. But are you really gonna eat like that all your life? I found it difficult.
Yeah,
Maybe,
right, because it's like
maybe,
gluttony. What are the other vanity? Those kinds of things. Those are just kind of extremes of things that are, normal, like, gluttony and eating.
The better you deal with them, the more under control they live inside of you, I think. The more you recognize them.
Oh, absolutely.
And give space to them instead of denying them. Like
right.
Vanity, lust, whatever. They are 7, but gula, glotoneria, I don't know in English.
Yeah, gluttony.
Gluttony. All of them live better, in a healthier state, if you give to them space.
Yeah.
If you don't deny of these also called sins.
The idea of living in any kind of regimented way really can have adverse outcomes.
Consequences.
I mean, I think about like anytime I've tried to like diet, and like the very first thing I do is like get a pint of ice cream and just eat the shit out of it, because you feel like you're not going to be able to have these things. Yeah.
Next one is Satan has been the best friend the church have ever had, as he has kept it in business for all these years.
That's funny. Well, I feel that's definitely specific to the Church of Satan.
Yeah. And I'm very happy and very grateful for all your contributions to clarify all these. Could we say, just to finish the interview, that somehow when you come and when we approach you, it's an invitation basically to embrace self-love? Yes. And self-acceptance? Yes. Would you say that?
Yeah, it's implicit. I mean, it's like, and explicit. It's like the most important thing is that self-fulfillment and that ability to evaluate for yourself what is good in your life and what feels right and what things feed you. Because, it is not easy to do it at all, I think, for anybody. It's one of the most painful things somebody can do sometimes is look in the mirror and have like a very frank conversation with themselves. And I don't even mean with like, the mental baggage that can come with, having to kind of look at oneself, or any of like the hang-ups that we develop as, victims in society of other societal constructs that are in opposition to the way that we live our own lives. I think that it's hard to kind of set aside that time because, especially we live in metropolitan cities, right? Like we live in like consumer-driven communities, and it can be really hard to be able to retain sense of self when you're trying to hustle to make rent, or you're struggling with in-laws, or whatever it is,
or any kind of abuse,
or if you're in like relationships that don't feed you, and or if you're doing something that like you're not happy doing, but then also don't have the information to how to change that. And the first step in all of that is to sit with yourself and to just really be like, where are these feelings coming from? Where are these, where do I want to go from here? What's it going to look like for me to have to reorder the way that things are to gain a little bit more control over the way that things are going, over the direction in my life? And we invite people to do that, and we give them the tools to begin that process. It is really very much a religion in that, like, this is
promote self-examination
and self-acceptance.
Apart from self-acceptance, yeah.
Absolutely. And to kind of separate like the pathology from like the activity. It can be really easy to think, oh, I'm shit because I did X, Y, or Z. And what we really want to do is kind of separate that, negative talk and those negative kind of self-concepts that people have kind of just developed. In order for them to be able to look at things as they are in kind of a factual way.
Okay. Oh my God. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Oh, good.
That was also very, it brought light to many ideas that I'm sure many of us had wrongly. We had concepts that probably weren't true. And now I feel illuminated by your wisdom.
Good. Well, did you know that Lucifer is the light bringer?
I know. I'm actually thinking of creating a Luciferist congregation because I love the idea of Lucifer.
We are all for it. Let us know if we can support that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure to talk with you.
It was really wonderful to talk to you too.
Thank you.